Hello, welcome to RSE Fire Modeling. In today's video, we're going to talk about calculating the dimensions for our reduced scale enclosure. And this is typically referred to as geometric scaling. To get started, we need to know the dimensions of our full scale enclosure. So we want to know what is the height of the full scale enclosure, and that's typically the ceiling height. The length of the full scale enclosure, and the width of the full scale enclosure. The next thing we want to determine is what we call the length scale. And typically in our work we use a 1/4 scale. But you can use whatever you want, whatever's going to work for you. For example, let's say that you're going to model smoke movement in an atrium, a 60-foot tall ceiling. You wouldn't want to use a 1/4 scale because your reduced scale would be 1/4 of that ceiling height, or 15 feet in this case. So you would go to a smaller scale, let's say a 1/12 scale. In some videos later on, we're going to talk about choosing different scales to make sure they comply with the various scaling laws. But you're safe in a typical ceiling height of 8, 10, 12 feet in the full scale when you use a reduced scale of, let's say, a 1/3, 1/4, 1/5, 1/6, something like that. The formula is really straightforward, and it simply says that the height of the reduced scale enclosure is equal to the height of the full scale enclosure times the length scale. Now our rooms and our full scales are typically 8 foot tall, 12 feet in length, and 12 feet wide. So if we use these numbers, we'll say that the height of the reduced scale enclosure is equal to the height of the full scale enclosure, 8 feet, times our length scale, which is a 1/4, 0.25. Therefore, the height of the reduced scale enclosure is equal to 2 feet. So the height of the reduced scale enclosure is equal to 2 feet. Now, to comply with the geometric scaling laws, we need to scale the other two dimensions. So we'll say that the length of the full scale enclosure, the length of the reduced scale enclosure is equal to the length of the full scale enclosure times the length scale. And we'll fill in the numbers. The length of the reduced scale enclosure is equal to the length of the full scale enclosure, in this case it's 12, times the length scale, and again that's 0.25. Therefore the length of the reduced scale enclosure is equal to 3 feet. Length, reduced scale enclosure, 3 feet. And if you notice, the width has the same dimension, therefore the width of the reduced scale enclosure would be 3 feet. Scale is 3 feet. So now when we build our 1/4 scale based upon a full scale with a ceiling height of 8 feet, a length of 12 feet, and a width of 12 feet, we will have a reduced scale enclosure that has a height of 2 feet, a length of 3 feet, and a width of 3 feet. And these are the dimensions of our reduced scale enclosure. Okay, let me know if you have any questions. Be safe and happy modeling.